Cargo Chief. We're a freight tech company, kind of solving the industry's biggest issues, not just when it comes to capacity, but sporadic capacity, and not just when it comes to rating, but the inaccuracies and volatility of the market. And how we do that is through our project and procurement software called C4. It looks like we have a kind of a mixed audience here between some customers and some of you guys just trying to understand a little bit more about what we're all about and kind of what the webinar, what we're going to be talking about today. So to that point, I'm going to kind of show you some more tactical things and how to do this stuff like right out of the gates. Things like improving your load to carrier ratios. I know often you'll book 30 loads in the last 30 days with 30 different carriers every time, mostly as a result because you're kind of posting your freight out, but we'll kind of show you some ways to improve in that area. And also along with that, we're going to kind of uncover some other areas where maybe you're leaving money on the table, or could use improvement if it's like maybe you're making $5,000, but based on the pricing engine that we have or what the market's doing, maybe you could have made an extra 10 grand in that market, as well as showing you how to double your coverage almost immediately. Also increasing your option pool maybe by 3 to 4 times. I know me running a freight brokerage, options were very, very valuable to me and my team, and not just like covering loads, but also to kind of give our customers a little bit more of that market insight and knowing where the market's going. And if rating tools are telling us it's $5,000 and all of a sudden carriers are at $6,000, that's really important to know. And you kind of got to be the first to get there so you can start to cover freight and at a profit too. At the same time, I'm going to kind of show you how you can increase your pre-booking, maybe up to 10-15%. Maybe you're pre-booking pretty well right now, maybe around 65%, which is good. But what about 80%? Isn't that even better? So kind of show you some tactical ways there. And then also thinking about time savings, like the time it takes to book freight. Pre-booking is one of the hardest things to do, and mostly because it takes a lot of time. We're going to kind of show you how you'll be able to get back around 20 hours a week just by reducing the spot buys, being able to pre-book more freight, and kind of giving you the chance to or capability, I guess, to take on more risks, take on more of those spot opportunities, and then the confidence to take that freight, because now you're going to have these new coverage zones as well as a bigger option pool to be able to cover that freight, and kind of going beyond the nets. I love fishing, so I always use this term of kind of casting the net. The wider your net, the more fish you're going to catch. But what about beyond the net? There's a lot more pools out there that are outside of the net. And if you can figure out a way to get there as well, why not, right? Increasing your option pool. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of show you the product here. Again, a lot of you are likely customers, and some are just new audience here, just first time looking at C4. So I'll do my best to not get too complicated and overcomplicate things. To kind of start off here, when we think about covering freight, a lot of freight brokers start with it's kind of like broken down in 3 steps, if you will. It's like first they're going to go to like their top 3 to 4 or 5 carriers that they know off the top of their head, or maybe it's in a list or an Excel sheet or something. And a lot of people, I'd bet 90% of everyone on this call, if you've ever booked a load, you probably have a list of carriers somewhere. And I think kind of with that list, it's not often actionable. It's always something outside of your TMS, and it's something that you kind of carry with you. And it's kind of more of it's like your pre-booking procured go-to pocket carriers. And the issue there is, like, one, like I just said, it's not in your TMS, or it's not integrated with data, or it's not active or actionable. And the other thing is it's inconsistent a lot of times. Like maybe you're on the phone jotting down a carrier and you're writing like airport codes for the guy's lane, but the other carriers you have, maybe they're city state spelt out and broken down into columns. So that inconsistency in data and information doesn't queue for information when you need it to book freight in an effective way. So there's the first kind of way that a lot of people book freight. The second is if they don't have any regular carriers, or if they're already going to the second leg, kind of like your historical carriers, like going through maybe right clicking in your TMS and seeing who has ran that lane in the last, I don't know, 90 days or all time, or whatever it is. And the issue there again is like, first you got to figure out like when you're going to go do that, which load you're going to pick up on, and then who you're going to call next, what you're going to sort by, what you're going to filter by, all these nuances that take a lot of time. By the time you actually like get to a carrier and you subjectively rule out like, I'm not going to call this guy because I just talked to him, or whatever reason it is, by the time you get to that third carrier in your list, you call them and maybe they're like, hey, if you called me 2 hours ago, I would have had a truck for you. Like that's happened to me more times than that. And it's frustrating that when you spend all that time getting there, the phone rings and now you got to deal with a carrier fall off. So there's just so many things and the just chaotic nature of the business that pull you out of that workflow. And that leads to just kind of the third part of posting your freight. Like that's often the third way, and there's not really a backup source to that. And when you think about like moving away from load boards, it's not because like you don't like load boards. Like load boards are okay. I mean, they have its fit, but I think a lot of people rely on that too much, and they don't you're not really addressing the problems at hand, like making more margin with what you've got, or expanding your business, or being able to drive carrier retention or engagement. Like, how do you do that? Once you do that, then you won't be relying on load boards so much. Then your rates will start to compress a little bit as you find better market carriers. You'll be able to take on kind of this more spot opportunity for the load boards, and maybe matching your freight in a better way and not just reliant on one solution. So that's kind of how I see a lot of brokers booking freight. It's how I did it in my past. And now kind of want to get into is showing you a different way. I should be sharing my screen here. Actually, yes, I am sharing my screen. What I'm going to start with is scorecards. And this is kind of where I want to show like your load to carry ratios. This is usually one of the first things that like when you're prioritizing your freight, which one should I be working on? Like, should I just work on this Ontario to Tullison? Should I work on Oklahoma to Kansas? Really depending on what you're after. If you're trying to find like improve your load to carry ratios, or if you're leaving money on the table, that's kind of the situation that goes on in your mind as you're trying to figure out which one do I go to. I'm going to pick on load to carry ratios, this Davenport to Vandalia. What I'm showing here is that I've moved this 24 times in the last 30 days with 24 different carriers. Not ideal. That's a new carrier every load that I've booked. And this is a lane that's rather consistent, right? Like if I click here, I've got it 24 times in the last 30 days. You can just see the spread of pickup dates here really tight too. So if you're naturally talking to carriers and often they're like, hey, when do you have another one? Like this is a great lane and a great starting point for either your procurement team, or if you're just cradle to grave and you're trying to make the most out of what you got right now. This is a great way to do that. And it's not about paying the cheapest rate every time. Like here, if I'm looking at my spread of rates, let's say like this guy, he took it for 1,600 advanced trucking, all the way up to Kerrigan, who took it for 21. Maybe it's about going to advance and maybe pitching him like, hey, I know you took this at 16, but how many can you take at 17 or 18? So that way you're not having to pay 2,100 to somebody else, right? Like, and then as you improve that carrier utilization and your retention, these carriers are going to keep coming back to you to where you don't have to suffer to the spot market, I guess. And you could start matching the spot freight with the spot market and when that time is right. So that's in a quick way to improve that load to carrier ratio and finding out which lane you should be looking at. The other thing is, since C4, we have our own pricing engine that's more so it's a forecasted rate based on the current market. It's not a delayed price, and I'll show a little bit more about that here shortly. But what we can actually do with your data and your load information is tell you on the same lane, Iowa to Ohio, you brought in 54 grand from your customer, you bought at 41 grand, so you made margin. We forecasted that you maybe should have paid 35 grand in total of those 24 loads. So you made about 13K, but you left about 5K on the table. That's an immediate like area of improvement. Like we were going back to to the carrier pay spread, like that's, I mean, clearly you're paying 16, 17, and then all of a sudden 21, $2,000, like that's where the margin savings comes in. And so from this point, what we do is really pitch you to, or not pitch you, but guide you to build a project here. And so the project is the feature that is really going to help you double your coverage, increase your option pool, and automate that outreach and save you a ton of time getting that, you know, close to 20 hours back a week. We have customers that use this tool and on the regular, they're getting back at least 20, 30 hours a week just because they're able to like organize the stuff in a way that they can automate some of their outreach by, and also at the same time, increasing their digital carrier engagements. So here's the feature of the Create a Project. There's several ways that you can build projects here in C4. And if you sign up for a subscription, we'll actually do all this for you. So you don't really have to do too much there. If you wanted to, you can build it. But we kind of shoulder a lot of that onboarding work for you. So here's kind of the project name. We look at it like an OD pair. Your trailer type will tell you what the project name is. A lot of people will say like, hey, do you have anyone for that Davenport to Vandalia? That's kind of how we like to name projects, because that's really kind of the simple language that's used. You can set your customer if you wanted. The duration's kind of the required piece here. So if we said that was about 24 times in the last 30 days, we can just call it 24 a month. We can specify days if we wanted to. I'm gonna just leave it blank for now. I think our max buy, so if we were paying from like 16 to 21, maybe call our max buy like 18. And we know that our customer rate, we can change that based on whatever that we're getting on that freight. You can cross calculate with your target margin. So if you wanted to go to like 20% margin, that'll tell you what your buy needs to be, and it'll cross calculate your customer rate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click create here. And again, all this stuff it's pretty intuitive once you're in the tool, but we do a lot of that for you, so you don't have to. So that way you're just kind of prioritizing which ones you should be working on and not having to think about it. So this is kind of the open screen here, where you can do a lot of things with the capacity that we serve up. I'm going to move to a different screen though to kind of show a little bit more into how the project works. So here's my project over here on the right. I just clicked on it, and now I'm in the actual project. So what we're going to do here on this recommended list, we just saw that we had 24 carriers in the last 30 days. What we do with your carrier information as well is we're going to map that to our database, to where our network just grows continuously as carriers book loads in the C4 network. That lane is then attached to that carrier, making it a new match and a unique lane to that carrier that you may have never known about. Some of the pitfalls with a TMS too is that you don't really know like which carriers can pick up your freight if they never hauled that load for you in the past. So it's really hard to like go beyond what's already there. Like if they haven't hauled it before, chances are you don't really know who else can take it, unless they're like it's a new carrier posted on the load board, or if you have your list outside of your TMS. So what we're going to do is show you that we've already got 116 matching carriers at any given time that can take that freight, depending on the frequency, whether it's daily, weekly, or certain times per week. We're going to show that list to you. The other thing is that if you sort this by my carriers, we show that you've got 61 carriers. So we just went from 24 carriers in the last 30 days to 61 carriers that you can take right now. So what this does is, rather than having to post a load every time, you can just come here. And again, all this will be done for you in the beginning, so you won't even be having to really click through this. But just assume that I click through all 60 carriers. We do this on the back end. And now I click procure. Now I've got a procured list. Assume that this procured list would be all of my matching carriers. It'd be that 67 or 61 carriers, whatever it was. So now I've got my go-to list. It's no longer in an Excel sheet. It's a list of carriers that both have either hauled this freight for me, or carriers that you've picked up from C4 because we know that they've hauled that load with somebody else. So now you have the opportunity to book this freight with them as well. Because a lot of times, like, you know, let's just take Irwin Brothers. Maybe you guys run them with like Houston to Atlanta all the time, but randomly you got this Vandalia to Ohio and you started posting your freight out, and now you've got random carriers picking up your freight. But Irwin Brothers has moved this all along, just not with you. But since they've ran it in the C4 network, now they're a part of your network and that lane base. So now you just doubled, tripled your coverage instantly because we've already got the data for you. So now what you can do at this point is, this is kind of when you think about the reducing the time that it takes to cover freight. This is when you're really going to start to increase your pre-bookings, get that time back every week. Why, when you think about like calling carriers, why call them? Why call just a random list of carriers when you could kind of prioritize who you're calling based on the action and activity that they're coming back to you with? So assume this list was, let's just say 60 carriers deep. What I can do every time I get this freight coming up, it's not necessarily pitching a load to them. It's really staging the capacity. And you can customize templates, and I'll show you quickly on what that looks like. But you can customize the template in the email that goes to them. Simply click this button right here, and that'll start to stage that capacity for you. So these carriers now, it's you're getting in front of them before you guys schedule that appointment, because I hear often that a lot of people won't really go procure or go book freight until appointments have been set. But there are a lot of carriers that are open to that, like open to saying yes before the appointment's set, if you give them enough time, if you have that relationship with them, right? And that's the whole name of the game, is building that relationship and expediting that option process. And so what this is going to do is start to drive in that digital carrier engagement, prioritizing the right carriers that you're going to be working with. When a carrier gets this email, and again, we can customize it with your logo, your name, everything, so it makes it look like it's coming from you and not a machine. At that point, a carrier is more likely going to engage with you. And a lot of times they're going to say like, hey, yeah, send it over, or when does it pick, or I can do this rate, or whatever it is, right? Like that, those all of a sudden become options. And what you can do if you want to go and call carriers, then you'll actually see if they opened that email. If they replied, well, you'll obviously get the reply. So you can kind of communicate with those carriers that are replying back to you and engaging that way. Again, if you want to call through carriers, we'll tell you that like, hey, this guy opened the email. And maybe that's a good starting point to say like, hey, Charlie or Milka, like, hey, I noticed that you opened the email, sent you this Davenport to Vandalia. Curious, what were you looking for on the rate or something? And maybe it's just they don't reply because the rate was off, or maybe they don't reply because the date or the weight or something like that. And a lot of times those are just points for negotiation. Like maybe the appointment time hasn't even been set yet. And so you can work that time out with that carrier. Say, even thinking about the ops side, like going to the shipper saying, hey, I've got a carrier that's going to come pick it up at 11. That makes your shipper feel much more confident that like you've got that secured and covered. So there are all those other intangible things that come with having those relationship carriers, and just expediting that process and prioritizing the right ones, right? Like why call a carrier that, if you think about the comparison of a load board, a carrier that says my truck's in Sanio, Ohio, I'll go everywhere, or I'll go to Illinois, Iowa, Montana, I don't know, something, and you go and call them, maybe you're on hold for 5 minutes, then they end up saying like $5,000, I don't know, something like really outrageous. Like why even call that guy, like if there's no connection beforehand? So projects, what it's also doing is warming that conversation up, moving you to the right leads to call, rather than just a random carrier. So what I want to do next, so that's kind of like your one-click outreach here. That again, that's what's going to really drive your pre-booking, give you that time back, and help you kind of like move into a more digital sense and prioritized way of booking freight. You can do a lot of things here with projects. You can create notes if you wanted to. There's tasks that you can drop for carriers if you wanted to, like if BG said call them back in an hour, you can simply do a task here. The other thing was the rating that I said I was going to get into. This is what we saw in our spread of Davenport to Vandalia was 16 to like, I think it was like 21 or something like that. And this is again going back to like our pricing engine and what we were recommending, that like, hey, you could have made $5 more grand. When we look at like recent transactions, the proof is here in the pudding. Like people are booking this load for 19, like you were paying 21. Like that's an instant $2,100 back, right? Like we pull in data as those loads are being booked. So here on the pickup date of the 28th, today is the 27th, we've already got information that, hey, people are moving this load at 19. You should not be paying 21. Like that's a clear indicator that, hey, maybe I should go click this button and email 60 carriers and just get that out, start to like build my footprint a little bit on this lane before everyone else does. Then I'm the one who's paying 21. I'm gonna kind of look at another lane here, one that's kind of like a loss leader or something like this Mount Crawford to Jessup. This is one that I was looking at earlier. A lot of times you're going to have freight that is just that loss leader, right? Like you're taking this load for a loss because you know you've got to, like, because maybe you make money on Dallas, Alabama or something. But what if you're able to, I don't know, maybe procure on that lane and not lose so much money every time? There's a clear winner here too, like your load to carry ratio, booking it 19 times with 17 different carriers. Like there's got to be some of these carriers that can take it more than once. That way you're not having to pay extra money. Here we're telling you, you brought in 17. We know that you're losing money on it, but we're saying that, hey, maybe you shouldn't have lost that much money on it. So you could have made at least another $2,000 back. And we know that, like, simply, everyone here on this call, you've probably experienced this before, just finding that one carrier that can take an extra load every time, like that immediately improves your margins. So here's again, just kind of the spread, 13, 16, 17, just kind of, a wide spread here, all the way up to $2,000. So then if we come back again, build that project, I'm gonna just do it quickly here. Build project, set my duration. Let's just call it 17 a month. I think that's what we're looking at. And now we've got that built. So here, what the recent transactions are telling us too is that, like, that rate should be lower as well. What compared to what other people are booking loads for. We know that someone just booked a similar lane, 70 miles difference at 1150. Like, why in the heck are we paying $2,000 on this? So you have that insight. Here we went from, I think it was 17 to 14 carriers. Now we've got 44 carriers for you immediately right out of the gate. So you can just kind of add all selected. Again, we'll do all this for you. You won't have to do any of this. We'll just kind of click through a couple here just so we have something to look at. Add selected. Here's my project over here. There's my selected carriers that I just picked up. And I've got another recommended 37 that are in my network. So again, even another thing, even as you book freight, like with new carriers, new lanes, different loads, whatever it is, as long as they become a part of your TMS and they're set up with you, chances are that they're in C4. We've got over 600,000 carriers and pushing like 400,000 or 500,000 lanes. So the chances are that we've already got those carriers here. So all you have to do is just set them up in your TMS. It doesn't even have to be a lane that you're booking regularly. It could have been like a Houston, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia that you book a new carrier on. But if they match this lane for us based on our network, then you'll be able to see them in this recommended list and then continue to add them as you book new freight and as your company grows. So here again, it's, simple one-click outreach right there. And every time you get these lanes coming up, go to your entire project list. You can just select like this Davenport to Vandalia that we built earlier. Just click this button here and that'll send out that email. You can kind of go through all of your lanes. We're actually going to do a multi-select. I don't know if it's available right now, but yeah, not available today, but we're going to allow you to kind of like multi-select these projects so you don't have to expand each one and then just click your check capacity button there, further reducing the time it takes to cover freight. The alternative today is kind of what I was saying earlier, is that it's all in an Excel sheet, right? Or like you're going through your TMS and it takes a lot of time to dig that up, and you're also calling them individually, you're emailing them individually. Each email that goes out is customized to that carrier, and it's like, it's very time consuming, like you're having to snip tool and use screenshots and type in your freight every time, copy paste, like we have templates for you. And I can just kind of show you that here, maybe. Yeah, so here's like the email templates that you can find through your onboarding. We'll customize this with you. You can set like your, excuse me, it'll actually be this check capacity email. This is kind of what it looks like. You can put like first name for the carrier that we have on record. We'll say like we have this run coming up again. We have some basic suggestions that we look at, and just some kind of like stats on the side is we have like less than 0.5% bounce rate, less than a 1% unsubscribe rate, very, very high deliverability. It's somewhere around like 98, 99%. And the reply rates on turn are around 40%. So giving you that up to like 40% digital carrier engagement. Of course, that depends on how many carriers you have, how big your spread is, and just different things, how we customize the emails. But there's the chances are there, and the stats are there, and the proof is there too. We have a couple case studies out. We can point you to if you want to read those. But here's kind of where we would customize your emails, giving you that personal touch without having to customize each email, because that's very time consuming. So I want to kind of talk about the last thing here, and it's going beyond beyond the net, right? Like what I talked about earlier with the CastNet reference. Let's just take like Atlanta to Lakeland, for example. We have in our network, or if I'm a broker, I've got 20 matching carriers. But if I go to the entire network of C4, the C4 network has 134. Not all of those are going to be set up with you. So what you can do is go beyond. And if you're trying to like build and expand your carrier base, like some of the main reasons why people lean into Cargo Chief and buy into C4 is to expand their carrier base. And we give you that capability to do that here. Like Ahmad Transport, maybe it's one of those lanes that you're posting and Ahmad Transport never posts their trucks. Maybe they don't really use load boards too much. But they run this lane daily with other brokers because they've built relationships. And now, since you have access to that data, you can come in, call Nelson by a first name, not dispatch, or pressing one for whoever's next. You can kind of have a little bit more personal touch and just kind of say like, hey, I noticed you guys run this lane. Looks like you run it pretty often. Curious what kind of rate you'd be at, and starting to really have a much better conversation than just calling about a truck. Hey, do you have a truck in Atlanta? No. Okay, bye. Like those are such wasted conversations there. Like they don't really lead to anywhere. I think like the times I've covered freight off a load board with outbound activity, like me actually calling off load boards, it's probably like I could probably pick like 10 loads in my entire career, and I've booked a lot of freight. So I think when you think about a comparison in workflow, there's much better options to go beyond the net, right? Going beyond than what you just have in your network. See if I got anything else here on my list that I wanted to talk about. That's pretty much it. When it comes to projects, again, we're gonna double your coverage immediately. Like, if you guys are booking 20 loads, 20 different carriers in the last 30 days, we're already going to have like 40, 60 different carriers for you to go after. Like that's pretty consistent with what we see whenever we onboard customers. So it's, even going further and not even you having to go after somebody, like you could just click a couple buttons and now those carriers are going to be coming to you rather than you having to spend your time calling, figuring out which one do I call, which lane do I work on. There's a lot of different ways to really just drive your pre-booking and increase your option pool too. I think if there's anyone who has any questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in the Q&A there. I think everyone should be allowed to ask questions. So go ahead and try it if you can. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask that. I'm going to answer a few just that I know that we get frequently asked. One is that carriers, like how many do we have? I mentioned earlier, but just in case you didn't catch that, we've got over 600,000 carriers. Let's just see what we're here at now. Yeah, 609,000 carriers. As far as lanes, we're roughly 400,000 or so lanes. I think we're pushing 500. I don't have a live number on that. It's not in the tool, but we've got pretty much coverage everywhere. Trailer types, you got van, flatbed, reefer, step deck. You've got a couple other options, but it starts to get pretty skinny whenever you go past step deck. Then the other thing that we typically hear is like, what's a subscription like? What is it like? I like to explain it more of like an experience with C4. There's integrated solutions. We have a couple of integrated TMSs. You can find those here on our website, on our partners page. We're integrated with Broker Pro, logistically, McLeod, Mercury Gate, TIE TMS, and a couple others coming up here in the next 30 days, 60 days or so. We got about 3-4 more TMSs that we'll be integrating with. The projects feature isn't quite one that's available for API, but it can be. If you guys wanted to, if you're on a homegrown TMS, then we can talk about that doubling your coverage and all the things that we kind of reviewed today. Another thing is, so the subscription, there's an integrated solution, but you can also get this off the shelf. It's doubling your coverage in less than an hour, like literally map your carriers and we will have just doubled your coverage. So it's pretty simple to do. Subscriptions like starts at $4.95 a month. We have monthly subscriptions giving you that flexibility as your freight grows or scales back or whatever it is. And it's really based on kind of like allotments. I think I've got oh man, I don't have our, let's see if this is it. Yeah, here we go. So should be able to see this page. We can share some of this information with y'all as well. If you'd like to kind of see where you would fit, it's really based on company growth. So if the more carriers you got, the more loads we're assuming you're going to have, the more we give you for projects, for RFPs, for pricing, and a lot of the other features that we didn't cover today. But that's really kind of, where you would fall into as far as like your company size. We send tons of emails a week, like millions. So we kind of cover that server bandwidth side, so you wouldn't have to worry about like deliverability for you, because we shoulder all of that, like coming from our server. And that's another one a lot of people ask is like, where's the email coming from, just to make sure that you don't get hit as spam. Like we make sure that we follow the spam laws, giving them unsubscribe links, doing it when they ask, and making sure we just follow the guidelines there and make sure our deliverability is really high. So we shoulder all of that server side with emails. That's pretty much it. I don't have too much else. I'm gonna go ahead and launch this poll here, and I think it's if you'd like to see kind of check out a demo of C4 separately of this. Again, I just kind of went over projects and the benefits, doubling your coverage, increasing your option pool, booking more freight, just a lot of things like that. We can talk about that in a demo, maybe customize a little bit more to your freight. In a demo, we can take a peek at real lanes that you'd like to see coverage on, and just see kind of comparing data between like what you're using. And if you're a customer today, just reach out to your customer success rep and we'll send this video over, send any materials we have, and just talk about how you can double your coverage.